Greetings. Today is 8/1/2019. It is now transitioned into the 30th day of the 5th month on the Almighty's mathematical calendar. And tomorrow evening we'll begin the month of Elul. Wikipedia says that Moses ascended the third time on that, but I'm not so sure I believe that. I tried to see if it fit, but I couldn't fit it. But anyway, I got some excellent information concerning the enemy for this video. I've had it for a long time now, but I've been tied up. So I got some free time. I'm going to do this video, and then I found excellent information concerning a watch that has all the checks in the checklist for the open door in heaven. I'll do that video in the next day or two or three. And it does pertain to Elul. Elul is a month for repentance. But anyway, I want to keep this video short, so I'm kind of just going to do a narrative and not keep running back and forth over the scriptures like I usually do. You guys can look the scriptures up yourself, because when I do that, I end up doing an hour video, and I know most people don't have time to sit down or listen to an hour video. So, I cleaned up the countdown timeline here. I cleaned it up a little bit since I was wrong about the spring. And then I cleaned this Daniel 9 timeline up a little bit. Okay, and this here, it took me a lot of work to do, but I think I got it pretty squared. And we will come back to that. So, like I said, I'm just going to do a narrative. Alright. Now, back in the beginning of humanity, the Almighty put angels here on earth with the purpose of being shepherds / intercessors for humanity. They were just supposed to be there to help us out. Okay? And Enoch describes their physical appearance as being centaurs. The upper half, they were human looking, and the lower half, they were horses. Okay? Now, there was a specific leader. There was 200 of them total that the Almighty put here on earth. And there was a leader. Okay? However, there was another one that decided it wanted to take females as wives. I'm not so sure exactly if that literally means as wives or if it was genetic splicing, DNA splicing. And the reason why I say that is because of all the different things that were occurring during that 2,000 years from Eden until the flood. Approximately 2,000 years. I don't know exactly how long it was, but with all the different minotaurs and centaurs and half human, half eagle, etc., etc. Something was going on during that time. I'm not so sure it was physical relations. I think it was probably more along the lines of splicing. And in Enoch it says that the main entity, that he corrupted all flesh. And I think he was splicing, DNA splicing. But I'm not 100% sure on that. It could have been physical relations, but anyway. So there was one who wanted to go in a different direction and rebel. Then the original leader didn't want to do it because they knew it was wrong and they were scared of the Almighty. But the one who influenced them all, which is the Antichrist, this entity right here, he influenced the other leader. This guy right here was the original leader, which eventually is the false prophet. He was scared, but this one convinced them to follow along, and then they convinced all 200 to make a pact to take females as wives, is what it says, but I think there was more to it than that. But anyway, the Almighty places all the blame of evil on this one entity, which is the Antichrist, and it's called Apollyon in New Testament. Okay, so during them 2,000 or some odd years, these fallen angels were procreating, and their children of fornication were procreating, and on and on and on and on for 2,000 years. Okay? And then they knew what they did was wrong, so they ended up pleading with Enoch to intercede to the Almighty for them. And the Almighty didn't want to hear it. He ended up casting judgment on them, and he said that they would witness their children kill each other, and then they would be locked up. So the Greek mythology and the Roman mythology and the Egyptian mythology, all the pagan mythology, with the war of the Titans and their children, the Olympians, and all that stuff, they were at that's all actually based on events that occurred. I mean, of course, it's not 100% accurate, but that is what was occurring for the 2,000 years or whatever, however much time passed by from Eden to the flood. All right, and when you read or hear about the mythology, or you see it in movies, you see that they're always at war against each other, killing each other. You know what I mean? This one killed that one, and blah blah. That is actually the fulfillment of the judgment that the Almighty passed upon them. The children killing each other. All right? And it also goes on to say that they became so strong and overwhelming in numbers that humans couldn't even feed them when they were working 365 days a year, whatever you want to say, 364 days a year. They couldn't even keep up just to feed them. And then they turned on each other, and then they turned on the humans, and it was just a mess. And that's why the Almighty brought about the flood. And everything was destroyed except for Noah and his family. And the fallen angels were locked up. Okay? The Almighty passed judgment on them, and then he said they would be locked up until the final week. Now, here's something new that I learned, and if you guys were paying attention in past videos, I was actually saying that I wasn't sure about this, but I found out, is when the Almighty locked up the fallen angels, okay, he locked up 199 in one compartment. And then he locked up the leader, which is the Antichrist, this entity right here. He locked that up with the demons, and the demons are the spirits of the dead giants, the dead offspring of the children of fornication, the dead offspring of the fallen angels. So he locked up this entity and them together, and then the 199 in another compartment by themselves. Now, when this event occurred, because my question in the past was, well, if they're all locked up, how was there a demon when the Messiah was here? Because they were all locked up, and I didn't know what was going on. But then I just found out about a month or two ago that Satan pleaded with the Almighty to have some of the demons to be under his control to fulfill his work. And the Almighty allowed it and gave him 10%. So 10% of the demons, which the demons are the dead spirits of the offspring of the fallen angels, he got control of 10%. The other 90% are locked up with Apollyon. Okay? Then, after the flood, humanity started carrying on again. And then Nimrod pretty much started conquering everything. And then at Babel, the Almighty separated the nations. Okay? And he separated them to the grandchildren of Noah. All right, which is approximately 16, I think. All right? And when he separated the nations, once again, he put angels over the nations with the intent of them being as shepherds, intercessors. And once again, a certain amount of them rebelled, which is the 10 horns. And an example of one of the ones that rebel is the Prince of Persia that we see in Daniel when Gabriel said that he had to fight against the Prince of Persia. Okay? So, some of them rebel, some of them stay loyal. Of course, Michael, Gabriel are definitely the loyal ones. And then at least 10 of them rebel. Okay? Now, when the Almighty divided the nations, Noah and his children, they agreed upon boundaries. They drew lots and they agreed upon boundaries, and they made a pact that they would not cross the boundaries, that they would be happy with what they got from the lots when they drew the lots, that them and their people would stay there and they wouldn't cross over. But what ended up happening is some of the descendants ended up not being happy with what they had, and they started crossing over and breaking the pact. But what you have to understand is that when the Almighty put the angels as shepherds over the nations, that old saying about as it is above, so it is below, that is what is occurring. And basically, all the ambitions basically start in the spiritual via these angels that are over the nations. Okay? Basically, it's like a spiritual game of Risk. I don't know if you ever played Risk. I was very... I like this game a lot. And basically what is occurring is Ephesians 6 tells us that they are the principalities, which harkens back as the princes over the nations. And in the Greek it says they're the powers of the cosmos, which I believe is they're operating in space. Okay? Do they have a base on the moon? Do they have a base on Mars? I don't know. Or is it just a ship? I don't know. I do know that I think it might have something to do with a cube. And wormwood crashing into the Pacific Ocean is more than likely that ship or cube or whatever it is that they're operating out of. But anyhow, so basically they are playing a game of Risk with humanity is basically what it boils down to. In a simple metaphor. And all the ambitions begin with these entities. Okay? Here, I guess this is the video game version. Alright? Now, so this was basically the separation back in the beginning, so to speak. And then, of course, they expanded out as the years went on. All right? So, the humans were supposed to stay within their boundaries. But because of these principalities, these rebel angels that were ruling over them, or in control over them, so to speak, shepherds over them, the rebel angels' ambitions ended up being carried out within the humans. And what I'm saying by that is that an example is Canaan ended up not being happy with his boundaries, so he crossed over via war and conquest. All right, but they made a pact that they wouldn't do that. Well, it's because when you look at what Scripture says, when it talks about the lament of Tyre and in other places, is that the angels that are over these areas, they had a thirst for conquest, for war, for blood, and they were basically wanting to compete with the advanced civilizations from the time of the flood, or excuse me, from the time of Eden until the flood. There were many advanced civilizations during that 2,000-year period. And these entities wanted to compete with that. But they were also bloodthirsty and enjoyed manipulating the humans into conquest. And if you look at Ezekiel, when it's talking about the fall of Tyre and all that, it explains that. So these rebel angels are over these areas, and they decide they want to build empires and expand, which is exactly the same principle as risk. And that is what that's what they have been doing for the past 4,000 years. Okay? Now, so they've been doing this for 4,000 years. They expanded, and Daniel 2 explains the main empires of human history. Okay? So here's a little explanation of what's going on here. The enemy. Alright? And you can pause that and look at that if you want. Right. So here it is. Daniel 2 equals Daniel 7 equals Revelation 13 equals Revelation 17. And I'll explain a little more. So Nimrod gets the dream, and then Daniel interprets it. Okay? And Bible scholars have gotten this incorrect, the majority of them. But anyway, I'm gonna show you the proper interpretation. All right, so the head is the gold. It's the lion. It's Ham, and the main one from Ham is Babylon. But ultimately, it is Ham, Cush, Mizraim, Put, Canaan. All right. Then the breast arms is the silver, which is the bear, and this is Shem, with the main one being Persia, but it's actually Elam, Asher, Aram, Lud. Okay. And then the third one is the belly thighs, which is Brash, and it's the leopard, and it's Japheth. And the main empire from them was Greece. And we got Magog, Meshech, Tubal, Gomer, Tyrus, and Javan. Okay? Now, Tyrus and Javan, they end up merging. Mizraim actually ends up assimilating with Javan as the years went on. I'll explain this more a little later. But Tyrus and Javan is actually Tarshish, Carthage, Troy, and I believe Tyre is part of that. Okay. So here are the 10 horns that I was able to glean from Ezekiel 32 to 38. Alright. So we got Magog, Meshech, Tubal, Persia, Cush, Put, Gomer, Edom, Egypt, Tyre, Tarshish. Okay? And, well, actually, let me just explain this. There's 10 horns in the beginning, but 3 get plucked. And if you've seen some of my past videos, I explain why I believe the 3 plucked actually repent, and they are the 3 angels in Revelation 14. Because you see the 2 wings of the lion get plucked in Daniel 7, and then all of a sudden you see the 2 wings given to the 144,000 so that when they get raptured, they fly away. Now, the main common denominator that I noticed about the areas that seem to be plucked is that they have that's where the descendants of Dan migrated to. And I did a big video on that in the past. Why I explain all this. So, now, scholars put the Dan down by Sheba, alright? But I put it up by Egypt because when you look at other parts of Ezekiel, the Dan is trading ivory husks, okay? And I looked into this, and I concluded that it was from rhinos. And where you look at the white rhino, it's up here in northwestern Africa. Well, right here is Mizraim. So of course they would have access to this. So that's why I concluded that the Dan is in Mizraim, not down here with Sheba. Okay. So then we see the fourth beast. Now Bible scholars say that this is Rome. Well, it is not Rome. Okay. The legs of iron is the federation of Ham, Shem, and Japheth, which is the 10 horns. Okay? When the Almighty forces them into a federation, that's the leg of iron, which is the beast of the sea. They come from the abyss. And it's made up of the rebel angels, 10 of them, led by Gog, Satan. It's formed at the start of the week of the wrath, right at the beginning of the trumpets. Its main formation is by the covenant of Daniel 9:27, which is when Gog, Satan, and Apollyon make a pact. Apollyon gives Satan control of all the demons, so now Satan has control of 100% of the demons, and Satan gives Apollyon jurisdiction. So basically, Satan gives Apollyon the jurisdiction to be the president, and Apollyon gives Satan the head generalship. So Satan's the main general. Apollyon is the main leader. So, the iron is the angels. Okay. Then we see the feet, which is part iron and part clay. This is the beast of the sea, which is when they mix with humans, because they force the humans to take their mark, which is DNA splicing, making human-angel hybrids. And the mark, that event, is what creates Babylon the Great. And Babylon the Great is the beast of the earth, which is the final 3.5 years during the bowls. The first 3.5 years of the wrath is the trumpets, wrath of the Lamb. The final 3.5 years of wrath is the wrath of the Almighty, the bowls. Okay? So, this is the same principle. The angel-human hybrids is the same principle as the giants of old. Same thing. However, we see that the DNA splicing does not mix well with the humans, as seen in Daniel 2:43 and Revelation 16:2, which is the first bowl when they get sores all over themselves. That's because it doesn't mix well, which Daniel 2:43 tells us. The seed of men does not mix with the iron, which, like iron doesn't mix with clay, doesn't mix with the fallen angels. Well, it's actually the fallen angel. The DNA comes from Apollyon. It's his DNA that they're forcing on humanity. So, the covenant of the strong. All right. The war in heaven is the official commencement of the great day of wrath, also known as the 71st week, which is meant for the completion of the desolations. All right. Daniel 9:24. All of that is not fulfilled until the fallen angels are thrown into the burning fire. Okay? That's what completes, that's what fulfills all of Daniel 9:24. Daniel 9:24 has nothing to do with the time of the Messiah. The 70 weeks has nothing to do with the time of the Messiah. It is an end time prophecy. And I have it all right here. The 70 weeks is for the anointed. All right? The anointed are believers, people who partake in the new covenant. Okay? Then at the end of the 70 weeks, the anointed are cut off, which is a Hebrew phrase for the fruit being removed from the earth. Reaped, which is the seventh seal. It all confirms each other. Just like the apostasy, which is the forsaking of earth for New Jerusalem. It's not a forsaking of the faith, it's a forsaking of earth. It happens before the beast is released. There's multiple scriptures that confirm this timing. Okay? And then the end of the 70 weeks also trans into the beginning of the completion of the desolations, which is the 71st week. So the 70th week is the trial, the 7-year trial, which is the seals. And then the 71st week is the 7 years of wrath. 3.5 years of trumpets, wrath of the Lamb. 3.5 years of bowls, wrath of the Almighty. In the midst, right before the seventh trumpet, is the mark. Okay? So, the war in heaven is very short, and the fallout is seen in the first 4 trumpets, and it happens in one day. First 5 trumpets happen in one day. Okay? The dragon, which is the federation of the rebel angels, is thrown to earth during this event, which Gog, with the hook in the jaw, being thrown down and then brought down on the mountains of Israel. That's talking about this war in heaven when they get thrown down and then they come to surround Jerusalem. Alright? And then the beast is released at the same time at the 5th trumpet. Happens in one day, the Feast of Trumpets of 2026. So, Gog, Satan, the leader of the 10 horns, they're thrown down. They know they have a short time. Apollyon and the Centaurian Locust army are released the same day. The dragon, which is Satan and the rebel angels, he and Apollyon get together and they make a pact, which is the covenant of Daniel 9:27. Apollyon gives Satan control of the remaining 90% of the demons, which is the Centaurian Locust army, and Satan God gives Apollyon the jurisdiction that he's given at the 4th seal. Okay? Now, the jurisdiction. The jurisdiction authority of the final beast empire is given to Satan Gog at the 4th seal. Alright? Death and Hades is Satan and the demons, because the demons are supposed to be in Hades, but they're not. They're with Satan. That's why it's called Death and Hades. Satan is the angel of death, and Hades are the demons that are supposed to be in Hades, but they're not because they're working with Satan because the Almighty allowed it. Okay, the 10%. So, Death and Hades equals Satan and demons equals Gog, Magog. Because at the end, when we see Gog, he takes the evil spirits out of Magog at the end of the 1,000 years. So that they're all three of them are the same thing. Death and Hades equals Satan and demons equals Gog and Magog. All right. Now, Satan, Gog, gets jurisdiction over the greater Middle East, which is this right here. Satan gets jurisdiction over all of this at the fourth seal. This is the authority he's given. This is the jurisdiction he's given over this landmass on earth. Okay? Now, it seems like he's getting given jurisdiction, but what's actually happening is the Messiah is backing him into a corner. All right? Because at the first seal, the Lion of the tribe of Judah says, I come. That is the beginning of his coming. And he has a bow, and it's empty because he already shot out his arrows. All right? The bow is Judah, which is end-time state of Israel, and the arrows are Ephraim, which is end-time USA. Now, he's using Ephraim to execute, manifest his arrows on earth, which is ultimately arresting, bringing about judgment on the powers to be. Also known as he's putting his enemies under his feet. So, after the first rapture, the open door in heaven, immediately, boom, the first seal. And he says, I come. Alright, that's when he's given his crown. Revelation 6, 1 and 2 is the same as Daniel 7 when he's given the dominion, the kingdom. It's the same thing, they confirm each other. And this is the time that he's going out to put his enemies under his feet. And he's using end-time Ephraim as his main instrument via the anointed leader, end-time Elijah, which is POTUS Trump. Okay? And I'll get more into that in the next video concerning the High Watch. But anyway, so even though the enemy, Satan, Gog, Death and Hades, even though they're getting jurisdiction, so it sounds like they're getting some type of promotion, it actually isn't a promotion. It's a demotion. Because the Messiah is backing them into the corner. Because right now, they're influencing the whole earth. But by the time of the fourth seal, they're backed into the corner of only having jurisdiction over the Middle East. Because America is bringing justice on behalf of the Messiah to the world. And you'll see more of that in the near future. It'll become more clear of how that's happening. But anyway, so this process of him putting his enemies under his feet is backing the rebel angels, 10 horns, into a corner and removes their dominating influence over the other parts of the earth. All right? And that's why, let's see here. Let's go to... That's why when we look at... Because... So right here is where it all began. This area is where it all began. After the flood, separated nations. Now, the principalities, they were moving their people, expanding their people outward. Well, what do you think happened? There was a principality leading people this way that came down in here and filled all this. Well, this is Ephraim, and Michael, Gabriel are over the tribes of Israel, or the nations of Israel, you know, the nations from Abraham. And so that makes the USA one of them, because they're end-time Ephraim. So this is why this border wall is such a priority, such a big deal. Because the bad influence that's coming up through here, and I'm talking about drugs, human trafficking, and all that despicable nonsense, that's because the influencing principality behind that is after Ephraim. That's what it's all about. You know, people think it's the left and right issue. No. This is a principality issue. And it's, you know, one of the rebel angels that has influence over this area is trying to push up into Ephraim. And now that the anointed ruler is in effect, he's pushing back on behalf of the Messiah. And this is going to get locked down. All right, and that door is going to be shut. Okay, and then these are going to get pushed out of here. They're 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 going to get pushed out of here, and they're going to get squeezed. And they're going to get pushed out of here, and they'll be squeezed into this little area. So even though it sounds like they're getting jurisdiction authority as a promotion, it's actually a demotion. They're just getting this little portion here when they used to have influence over everything. Okay? So, all right. Now, the abyss is opened. We went over this in past videos. Because the 144,000 are sent back to earth in Revelation 8:5. Okay? And when they get sent back to earth, the ship that's prepared for them by the Almighty, when it lands in the ancient area of Bashan, there's an earthquake. You see it in Revelation 8. There's an earthquake. When that ship lands with the 144,000, the two witnesses, there's an earthquake. And that earthquake, when you look at Bashan, we'll go to it real quick. So, right here is the ancient area of Bashan. Okay? And this is where the 144,000 are going to land in their ship once they get sent down from New Jerusalem. Okay? The 144,000 are the two witnesses. They get taken up at the seventh seal, Revelation 7, with all the other believers because they are believers. It says they're servants before they're sealed. Well, you can't serve the Almighty without doing His will, and you can't do His will without believing in His Son. All right? So it's obvious 144,000 are believers prior to being sealed. And like I said, Revelation 12 sign was the spiritual conception of the 144,000. They were already believers before the Revelation 12 sign back in September 23rd, 2017 at the autumn equinox. That was the spiritual conception of them. That's when they were tagged in the spirit as, that's when the Messiah handpicked them. So this is them. And now they're going to grow and grow and grow for these next 9 years, and they're going to be birthed in 2026. And when they're birthed, they're caught up with the other believers, because they are believers, at the seventh seal. And then for 30 days, they're going to be trained, sealed, commissioned for their special 1260-day mission, which is to testify to the unbelieving humanity, because at that point in time, everybody left alive does not believe in the Messiah. And they're going to testify for the 1260 days. Okay? But they're sent back to earth in Revelation 8:5, and they land in their ship, which is the instrument prepared by the Almighty. They land in the ancient area of Bashan, which is right in here. And the earthquake, which you can see is Damascus is in close proximity. The earthquake is what destroys Damascus, and at the same time, because Apollyon is locked up right here, and at the same time it rips open the abyss, which for Apollyon it's right here. And I showed that in past videos. And right now, oh, there it is. It's waking up. Alright. This is where, oh yeah, look at that. Okay, here. This is where Apollyon and the Centaurian army are locked up underneath this. This is what breaks open. And then from the time they come out and they make a deal with Gog, Satan, and then they march down here, and we're talking probably hundreds of millions. You know, you gotta understand, these things were procreating for 2,000 years. So there's probably hundreds of millions of them that come out, these Centaurian 12-foot tall, 1,000 pounds of muscle, mean beasts. Been locked up for 4,000 years. They come out not to make peace. They come out to destroy. And they come out of here like a swarm of locusts. And they rush down here and immediately surround Jerusalem. Okay, and within 33 days after the release, Jerusalem is conquered and the 42 months begins. Okay? And actually, Satan has control of them, and he's the one leading them. Because Apollyon gives Satan control of them in exchange that he's the leader. Okay? So, now, Satan leads the conquest of Judea and Jerusalem because he knows he has a short time, and this begins the 42 months. Alright, so let's see here. Revelation 13. Okay. So God gets the authority at the fourth seal, so that's sometime during the trial, the 7-year trial of the seals. Okay, then they make the covenant, the Daniel 9:27 covenant between the strong, which is the iron, to rule over the many, which is the Centaurian army. Then it says here, okay, alright, okay. And there was given to him a mouth speaking arrogant words, blasphemy, and authority to act 42 months. Okay, so Gog gets the original jurisdiction authority at the fourth seal. Okay, then he gives it to Apollyon right here The dragon gave him his power and his throne and great authority, great jurisdiction. Okay? And they worship the dragon because he gave his jurisdiction to the beast. Okay? And humans are saying, who is like the beast? Who is able to make war with it? Alright? Because think about it. You got hundreds of millions of these mean, big, huge, monstrous centaurs coming out of the abyss to destroy. And at this point in time, humanity is going to be in the Stone Age after everything that happened. Alright? They're barely going to be able to lift their heads off the pillow. They probably can't even feed themselves at this point. So when they see these things rolling out, just rolling over humanity, conquering them with ease, this is why they're saying, who can make war with them? Alright? Because they can't. And this is the same reason why the Messiah says those in Judea must flee. Because these are the days of vengeance. Alright? He's saying that because they're not going to be saved. They're not getting any... There's no saving going to be done. The beasts are coming out and just going to roll over everything. The first 3.5 years of the beast of the sea, they conquer humanity with ease. And everywhere outside of their jurisdiction, they destroy at the sixth trumpet. So the only place on earth that is habitable with any human life after the sixth trumpet is the area that I showed you here on the map. Right here. This is the only area left habitable with any human life after the sixth trumpet. The beasts destroy everything. Alright? Okay. Alright. Now, so this is what happens. God gets the jurisdiction at the fourth seal. He gives it to Apollyon right here in Revelation 13. And this is the authority, the jurisdiction to act 42 months. Okay, because after they trample Jerusalem, which like I said is 33 days after Revelation 8:5, when the 144,000 touch down. 33 days later, the beasts have conquered Jerusalem. And this is when the 42 months begins. The authority to act. The jurisdiction to act. Okay? Now, after that, they conquer humanity. Then they set up the mark, and they force all humans alive on Earth, which is the only in the Middle East. They force all of them to take the mark. And if they refuse it, the beast kill them. Simple as that. When the mark is set up, at the end of the 1290, okay, let's go up here real quick. Okay. When the mark is set up, right here, at the end of the 1290, and at the end of the 1260. 1290 and the 1260 run parallel. 1290 begins when the daily sacrifice, which is believers, living sacrifices, when they are removed at the seventh seal, the 1290 begins. And it ends when the mark is set up. Well, 30 days after the 1290 is when the 144,000 are sent back down in Revelation 8:5, which begins the first 5 trumpets. This all happens in one day. Alright? So, at the end of the 1290 and the 1260, the mark is set up. At this point in time, this is when the 144,000 are the first to are the first to refuse it, and they're killed. That's why they're killed. This is their special mission. This is why they're the first part of the sacrifice, because they're sacrificing themselves, just like the Messiah sacrificed themselves. That's why he handpicked them. It's like a mirror, right? He's sending them on a special mission, just like he went on a special mission. And they're gonna, because they were actually raptured up at the seventh seal, but they're coming back on a special mission, the 1260-day special mission. They testify, do all their things for that 1260 days, and at the end, when the mark is set up, they're the first to march up into the Jerusalem and say, no, we will not worship you. We worship the Most High, one true Almighty, and His only begotten Son, the chosen one, not you. And then the beast is allowed to put them to death because they allow it, because they know that this is their ultimate mission, is to sacrifice themselves as an example to the new believers who receive their testimony. So right here, when the mark is set up, at the end of the 1290 and 1260, these next 45 days, which is from the 1290 to the 1335, these 45 days are the Great Tribulation, right? And this is when the beasts kill all who refuse the mark. This is the blood of the saints and the blood of the prophets, right? It's just this 45-day period is the Great Tribulation. I know I'm only saying just, but these are the days cut short, all right? Because if the beasts were able to just torture them and do whatever, they would give up and end up, so because it's cut short, they're able to endure, and that's why some of them get saved. All right, and this is where the Messiah is saying, those who look to save their life will lose it, and those who look to lose their life will save it. Because what he's saying is that if you take the mark to save your life, you're going to lose it. But if you refuse the mark to lose your life, you're going to save it. That's what he's saying. All right. So then, at the end of this Great Tribulation, the 45 days is the 1335. And the blessed in Daniel 12 about the 1335 is the same blessed in Revelation 14 when it talks about when you die in the Messiah. It's a good thing because your works are going to follow you, because you're going to get reaped up to the New Jerusalem. All right. Well, when this is over right here, this is what creates Babylon the Great, the beast of the earth. Because now everybody on planet Earth that are alive has the mark. So the whole earth is harlots. That's why it's Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots. Because the whole earth are harlots. They're all wicked. Because they took the mark. They were spliced with Apollyon's DNA, and they're half angel, half human hybrids. All right? And this is where, because right here is when the 42 months ends. And then they go on for the times, and half a time, which is Revelation 13, when 13:12, where it says, he exercises all the authority of the first beast. Meaning the jurisdiction continues on. Okay? So, alright, extension granted. Alright, jurisdiction process. Alright, here we are. Okay, after the mark is set by law created, Continues in, all right. Until, so the jurisdiction continues during the beast of the sea into the beast of the earth. The beast of the earth is Babylon the Great. The jurisdiction continues for the final 3.5 years of the bowls of wrath, which is the wrath of the Almighty, until the stone comes down to destroy it, which we're talking about Daniel 2 here. The stone cut out, not from human hands, comes down from heaven, New Jerusalem, and destroys defeat, which is the iron and the clay, which is when the Messiah comes down to tread the winepress of the war of the great day. Okay? Now, in Daniel 7, where it talks about the extension granted, that's talking about well, at this point in time, it's only 7 horns. So you got Gog and 6 others. 6 other rebel angels. Because 3 of them were plucked up, which I believe they repent. And they're the 3 angels in Revelation 14 spreading the gospel, warning humanity, and declaring Babylon's done. And also you'll see in Daniel 7 that the 2 wings of the lion are plucked, and then the lion's made to stand on 2 feet. And then you see in Revelation 12, 2 wings are given to the 144,000, and they fly away from the presence of the serpent, of the beast, for a times and a half time. And that's when you see the 144,000 raptured up to New Jerusalem in Revelation 11, 12. And then you see them with the Messiah at the heavenly Mount Zion in New Jerusalem. That's what's going on there. So the 2 wings of the lion are plucked, given to the 144,000 to rapture them up. Meaning, them angels that repent assist in the rapturing up of the 144,000. And then the 3rd one, I believe, is assisting. Okay? Now, because the rebel angels did not sin with females back prior to the flood, they haven't been locked up yet. The only thing they did is rebel. So the fallen angels, they rebelled, and then they mixed with humans. So that was like a double bad deed. And that's why they were locked up for 4,000 years on death row, and then they get released for their 7 years, and then they get thrown into the burning fire. Okay, well, the rebel angels, the 10 horns, which ultimately are only 7 after the 3 repent, they never sinned with the females, so all they did was rebel. But so they have to be locked up first prior to being dealt with. So they got to go on death row, and that's what the extension of life granted to them is. Okay, so they don't get thrown into the burning fire when the Messiah comes down as the stone. It says they're granted an extension of life in Daniel 7. Right here. It says, as for the rest of the beasts, their dominion was taken away. Their dominion was taken away. It was because they got beat up at the War of the Great Day, and they get locked up and thrown into the abyss, prison, and that's the extension of life granted to them for an appointed period of time, which is the 1,000 years. Okay? So they get locked up in the abyss for 1,000 years. That's their death row. Then they get released after the 1,000 years, and once again Satan leads them, and he gathers up the spirits of the dead angel-human hybrids that take the mark, which is Magog, and he tries to make war against the camp of the saints, but the Almighty rains fire down, annihilates them, and then we have the white throne judgment, and we have the new heaven and the new earth. Now, one of the main underlying themes of Scripture is this 7,000-year process that the Almighty is conducting in response to the origination of evil brought about by the Antichrist back in Eden. That's where evil was brought about, conceived, whatever you want to say. All right? And ever since then, the Almighty's been dealing with it. He pronounced judgment on the fallen angels and their children. He locked them up on death row at the flood for 4,000 years until the 70th week. Then he cleanses heaven, space, when he comes here into our dimension at the end of the sixth seal. He cleanses heaven, space with the war in heaven. So heaven's cleansed, space is cleansed at the beginning of the 71st week, the beginning of the first couple trumpets, right? Then he cleanses all flesh when the Messiah comes down and kills all, because everybody on planet Earth alive at that time has the mark. So when he comes down, he kills everything. So flesh is cleansed. Flesh cannot inherit the kingdom. Right? These people that think there's survivors hiding in a cave somewhere, that's not happening. And like I said, if you take in the perspective that there's three near extinction level events that occur within 60 days. The sixth seal and the first two trumpets are three basically extinction level events that hit Earth within 60 days. Right? There are no people hiding in caves surviving, right? And even if they do, at the sixth trumpet, the fallen angels and the Centaurian army go out and kill everything that isn't in the Middle East under their jurisdiction. And then everybody under their jurisdiction, they force to take the mark, and if they don't, they kill them. Period. These people insist because they don't want to dissect the word, so they look at what the King James says or whatever English translation says, and they take it at face value rather than doing their due diligence to dissect the word and see what the Messiah is actually saying. They're detectives that walk into a crime scene. They see a dead person on the couch with a gun in their hand, and just because they see a dead person on the couch with a gun in their hand, they say, suicide, case closed. Well, no. That's not what the Messiah expects of us. That's not what 2 Timothy 2 is talking about when he says to rightly dissect his word like a good workman. He's telling us that we got to dig into this to get the real idea of what's going on. And these people that think they're survivors, they're just taking the English translation at face value, trusting a couple men with a candle and a feather and some ink that what their translation is perfect. You don't gotta look into it any further. They did it right back in 1611. They did it perfect. Yep, in their stone house with a couple candles and a feather, and dipping their feather in ink, translating a language which is extremely hard to do. Back in 1611. Come on. And they're just taking it at face value? No. That's not what the Messiah is telling us to do. He's telling us to dissect it like detectives that enter a crime scene and don't take anything under assumption until they examine it all. And just like what's going on right now with these investigations, true investigations take time. You know, all these years that went by with all these shootings and all that, baloney. And they have a conclusion within 3 days? Yeah. Okay. Real investigations take time. And the Messiah commands us to dissect his word. And then he tells us in John 14:21 that when we keep his commandments, that's when he reveals himself to us. So if you're wondering why your insight is crappy, it's probably because you're not keeping the commandments. Because he doesn't reveal himself to you until you start keeping the commandments. It's not the other way around. So, after the white throne judgment, that's when heaven's cleaned, earth's cleaned, and that's the new heaven and new earth. It's not a literal new heaven and new earth like some people try to say. No, it's just a cleansed heaven and a cleansed earth. And then after all's clean, that's when he comes down to tabernacle with us, which is the whole goal of this process. So he wants to come down to be with us. But he got to clean the dirt, the evil first. Alright, so I'm pretty sure I flapped my gums pretty long again, but hopefully this brought some clarity. Alright. Right here, these are the 3 that I believe are plucked. These are the 2 wings. And their common denominator is the descendants of Dan settled in these areas. And like I said, I believe the descendants of Dan, or I should say the 5th seal martyrs, I believe are believers with DNA from Dan. That's why Dan isn't in the 144,000, because they're the 5th seal martyrs, but their prayers are mixed with the 144,000 in Revelation 8, and that's why they get sent to Bashan, and that's how Dan is leaping forth from Bashan, because he's with them. Maybe he's helping to operate the ship that they have, or something's going on, but like I said, that's the common denominator. Alright? And Pergamum, Magog, is where the throne of Satan is. Okay. Alright. And that's about it. Like I said, I got a really good information coming up for that other video, that the extremely high watch that has all the check marks. And I'm really looking forward to doing it. But till then, may the will of Yahuwah, the Most High, One True Almighty, our Father in heaven, be done in the name of his only begotten Son, Yahushua.